Welcome to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight, we open a creaking door into the forgotten corridors of history, where the air is thick with dust and the walls remember things we would rather forget. These are the asylums, vast decaying structures where the echoes of the past still drift like whispers down the empty halls. Our story begins far from the city lights, on a winding country road that disappears into a tangle of bare-limbed trees. The moon hangs low, swollen and pale, casting long shadows over a building that rises out of the darkness like a skeletal giant. The old Greystone Asylum, closed since the early 1970s, stands in silence, its windows black voids, its roofline jagged with the collapse of years. But silence is deceptive here. Beneath it, there is movement, faint, almost imagined, the sort of rustling you hear when you think you are alone, but know in your bones that you are not. When Greystone was built in the late 1800s, it was considered a marvel of modern psychiatric care. The main building alone stretched nearly a quarter of a mile from end to end, an immense fortress-like structure of grey stone quarried from the surrounding hills. Inside, its wards were bathed in light from tall windows. Doctors spoke of moral therapy and the healing power of open space. But ideals tend to decay faster than stone. And by the mid-20th century, the institution was overcrowded and underfunded. Patient records from those years, at least the few that have survived, tell a grim story. Men and women suffering from everything from postnatal depression to shell shock found themselves committed for life. There were whispers of experimental surgeries, electroshock treatments performed without anesthesia, and solitary confinement in tiny windowless cells. The official histories avoid these details, but the stories linger in local memory. And sometimes, when the wind is still, so do the voices. Urban explorers who have ventured into Greystone's ruins tell of strange encounters. They describe the sound of slow, dragging footsteps echoing from the far end of a corridor, always too far to see who makes them, and always moving just ahead, no matter how quickly they follow. Others speak of standing in the central stairwell and hearing someone softly call their name, though they are certain no one else is in the building. One man swore he saw a figure standing in the moonlight on the third-floor landing, a nurse in a starched white uniform. But when he climbed the stairs, the landing was empty. It's easy to dismiss such accounts as tricks of the mind. The brain is a master at finding patterns in darkness after all. But there are more tangible traces of the asylum's past. Scraps of letters crumbling in desk drawers. Journals in which trembling hands recorded days that blurred together. One page, written in a careful, slanting script, reads, "The walls speak at night. They know my name." Local residents avoid the asylum after dark. Some claim it's cursed, that those who spend too much time within its walls come back changed, more withdrawn, more fearful, their dreams plagued by shadowy figures. Others say it's the land itself that holds the darkness, as the building was raised over the remnants of an older structure, a poorhouse that burned down in 1842 under suspicious circumstances. Nearly 24 people died in that fire, their bodies never properly buried. And perhaps that is where the real story begins, not with the doctors or the patients, but with the restless dead beneath the foundations. The deeper you tread into the forgotten corridors of these institutions, the more you realize that the air is not merely stale, it is weighted. A pressure clings to your chest, like the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for you to make a mistake. Your footsteps echo, not with the clean, crisp sound of a modern hallway, but with a warped, hollow resonance, as though the very architecture is remembering every footstep it has ever felt. You try to ignore the sensation of being followed, but something inside your mind keeps urging you to glance over your shoulder. Each time you do, you are greeted only by the empty hallway behind you, though the shadows seem just a fraction closer than they were before. An abandoned nurse's station looms ahead. Its once white counters are yellowed, its drawers hanging open as though someone rifled through them in panic before abandoning the search. You lean in, brushing away dust, to reveal a scattered collection of items: a rusted pair of surgical scissors, a prescription bottle half filled with chalky tablets, and a small stack of yellowed patient charts. The names are faded, almost illegible, but one catches your eye. Patient number 67. Restrained. Beneath the chart is a Polaroid. The edges are curling, the image inside faded but still horrifying. It depicts a figure strapped to a bed with thick leather belts, their head turned just enough to show one pale, lidless eye staring directly at the camera. You put the photograph back down, though it feels like the eye in the picture is still following you. Somewhere deeper in the building, a door slams shut. The sound is so sharp, so immediate, that it forces your body to jolt forward. Instinct tells you to run, but run where? In these labyrinthine halls, one wrong turn could lead you into a dead end, or into something worse. You pass a mural painted decades ago, its cheerful colors now flaking and warped. It depicts smiling children holding balloons, their faces rounded with cartoon joy, but time and dampness have disfigured the image. The paint has run in dark streaks down their cheeks, making them appear as though they are crying black tears. The wind shifts, or perhaps it isn't the wind at all. A faint, whispering murmur brushes against your ear, too low to make out the words, but carrying the unmistakable cadence of speech. You freeze. Your eyes dart to a nearby doorway leading into what appears to be a patient dormitory. Rows of beds stretch into the shadows, each covered in moth-eaten blankets. The whispers grow louder when you step inside, though still you cannot understand them, until a single word cuts through the air like a blade. Stay. The voice is not loud, but it is clear, and it comes from somewhere close, too close. A shiver crawls up your spine as your peripheral vision catches movement at the far end of the room. At first, you think it's just a trick of the light, but then the shape becomes more distinct. The silhouette of a person standing perfectly still between two beds. They are too tall, their posture too rigid, as though their bones are locked in place. You blink, and they are gone. The silence that follows is worse than the whisper. It is the silence of anticipation. Something here has acknowledged you, and now you are part of its game. You step back into the hallway, and the moment you do, a wave of cold air rolls over you. Somewhere ahead, a light bulb flickers, a pulse of dim light, revealing a set of double doors. Above them, a tarnished brass plaque reads, Ward C, Restricted Access. Every instinct screams at you not to open them, but there's something about the way the shadows curl at the edges of those doors, as though they are beckoning you closer. And so, you push. The darkness inside Blackwood Institute thickened, the deeper one ventured. Each hallway seemed to stretch farther than it should, each turn folding back in on itself, like the mind of someone lost in fevered dreams. The air was heavy with the scent of rot, plaster dust, and an almost imperceptible sweetness, like flowers placed too long ago on a forgotten grave. By the time we reached the fourth wing, the temperature had dropped noticeably. Our breaths came out in pale clouds, and our footsteps echoed against the cracked tiles in an oddly delayed rhythm, as if another set of feet was following one beat behind. Marlowe, our cameraman, stopped abruptly, his lens trained on a darkened doorway. "Did you hear that?" he asked in a whisper. We all did. A slow, dragging sound, as though someone's fingertips were trailing along the walls, just out of sight. A moment later, a voice, faint, female, and impossibly close, spoke 2 words. "Help me." Evelyn, the historian, swore under her breath. That's the exact phrase reported by the Night Watch in '72. They said it came from room 6B, but that wing was sealed shut. Naturally, that's where we went. The barricade to 6B wasn't much, just a few rotting boards nailed haphazardly across the frame. We pulled them aside with minimal effort, each creak of splintering wood sounding like it echoed down the length of the building. The smell that rolled out from the darkness inside was overwhelming, a stale mixture of mildew and something acrid, like burned hair. Inside, the walls were covered in sprawling black mold, except for one patch. That bare section of wall was covered in faint pencil marks, thousands of vertical tally marks scratched over one another in chaotic swarms. Some were so faint, they seemed decades old. Others looked freshly made. And then the whisper came again. Only this time, it wasn't in our ears. It was inside our heads. "Stay!" It wasn't a request. Marlowe stumbled backward, the camera light swinging wildly. Evelyn clutched her temples and gasped as if in pain. I could feel it too, an invisible pressure pressing against my mind, forcing thoughts into place that weren't mine. Images. Patients, huddled in corners. Nurses walking past without seeing them. The sound of endless weeping from the walls themselves. We tried to leave, but the hallway outside no longer led to where it should. Instead of the main corridor, we found ourselves in another ward, one that hadn't existed on any map. This ward was pristine, the paint fresh, the beds neatly made. And yet, it was completely silent, not even the hum of electricity. We walked for what felt like hours. Doors opened into rooms that were exact copies of the last. Eventually, the repetition broke. A single room with a patient sitting upright on the bed, her back to us. Her hair was matted, her hospital gown torn. She rocked slowly back and forth, whispering something over and over. "Count them, count them, count them." We stepped closer, and she turned her head. Her face was wrong, pale as wax, the features stretched as if carved into something not meant to hold them. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I realized with a sick jolt that they were my eyes. Evelyn screamed. Marlowe's camera hit the floor, and the room dissolved into blackness. When we came to, we were standing outside in the cold morning light. The asylum loomed behind us, silent as the grave. None of us remembered leaving. The camera was gone. Evelyn refused to speak the entire ride home. A week later, she was found wandering the streets near Blackwood, barefoot, and repeating the words, "Count them." She didn't recognize me when I visited. Marlowe never answered my calls. His apartment was empty, except for a stack of blank videotapes arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. And me? I can still hear the whisper when I close my eyes. It's patient, it's waiting, and it knows my name. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I swore it, in the same shaky way you promise yourself you'll quit a bad habit, with conviction in the moment, but no faith in the future. For a while, I almost believed I could keep that promise. The days after Blackwood blurred together. Sleep became a hostile country, one I entered only reluctantly, and never without nightmares. In them, the asylum's halls were endless, folding in on themselves like intestines, the walls pulsing with breath. Always, somewhere ahead of me, a voice whispered from just out of sight, the same single word, stay. But what worried me more was what happened when I was awake. I began to notice patterns, objects in my apartment shifting subtly when I wasn't looking, a coffee mug turning to face me on its own, the bathroom mirror angled so I could see the hallway behind me, a draft that carried the faintest scent of mildew. And sometimes, late at night, my reflection in the window seemed a fraction too slow to match my movements. I didn't tell anyone. Evelyn was still in the hospital, and Marlowe was gone. No forwarding address, no explanation, just gone. It was on the 7th night that the scratching began. At first, I thought it was a mouse in the walls, but the sound was deliberate, measured, like the tip of a pen dragging across paper. When I pressed my ear to the plaster, I realized with a sick chill that it wasn't inside the wall. It was behind it. Something was on the other side, tracing slow, vertical lines. Tally marks. I slept on the couch that night, but the scratching followed. No matter which wall I leaned against, it was there. Steady, patient. By morning, I had made up my mind. I had to go back. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't even curiosity. It was compulsion. The same kind of pull I'd seen in Evelyn's eyes before she wandered back to Blackwood. I told myself it was to find answers, to reclaim something the building had taken from me. But deep down, I knew the truth. The asylum had already claimed me, and I was only going to where it wanted me to be. The drive was longer than I remembered. The GPS kept losing signal, rerouting me down back roads that seemed to loop in circles. The sun was sinking by the time the spiked silhouette of Blackwood's roofline rose against the tree line. The gates were gone, or maybe I had imagined they were ever there. Weeds choked the gravel drive, the brittle stalks scratching the underside of my car. The windows of the building stared down at me, black and unblinking. Inside, the air was exactly as I remembered, stale, heavy, and faintly sweet, as though the building had been holding its breath since the moment I left. I retraced my steps without thinking, passing the flaking mural, the nurse's station, the long corridor where the light bulb had once flickered. My body seemed to remember the route better than my mind, leading me without hesitation toward Ward C. The double doors groaned in protest as I pushed them open. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt it, a subtle shift in the air, like the drop in pressure before a storm. The shadows at the far end of the hall seemed to ripple, bending toward me as though they recognized me. I moved deeper into the wing. My flashlight beam cut across doorways, revealing glimpses of empty beds, overturned wheelchairs, peeling paint. The sound came first, faint, irregular tapping, like fingernails on wood. I followed it into a side room. It was room 6B. The tally marks were still there, crowding the walls in a chaotic storm of lines. But there was something new. In the bare patch of wall, between two columns of marks, words had been scrawled in jagged pencil strokes. Count them or stay. The tapping stopped. I turned, certain I'd see someone standing in the doorway. But the hall was empty. My flashlight flickered, and for a heartbeat, the walls seemed closer, the room narrower. I stepped back into the corridor and froze. The layout had changed again. This wasn't Ward C anymore. The hallway was pristine, like the false ward we'd wandered before. The paint gleamed under cold white light. The beds were perfectly made. My footsteps sounded muffled, as though the floor was padded. I passed door after identical door until one stood ajar. Inside, a patient sat on the bed, rocking back and forth. It wasn't the woman from before. This one was a child, maybe 10 years old, hair hanging in tangled ropes over her face. Her voice was a rasp, barely audible. "Count them! Count them! Count them!" On the wall above her bed, tally marks covered the plaster. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. I forced myself closer. "How many?" I asked. She stopped rocking. Slowly, she turned her head. Her face was my face, but younger, impossibly younger, with eyes that held the weight of decades. Her mouth curled into a thin smile. All of them. The room went dark. I woke on the floor of my apartment. No memory of leaving Blackwood. No car in the driveway. My shoes were caked in mud, and my hands smelled faintly of pencil lead. When I checked the walls, the tally marks were there, and they've been multiplying ever since. I don't know what happens when they fill the walls completely, but I think I'll find out soon. Because the whisper is louder now. It's in my head when I wake. It follows me into dreams. And last night, for the first time, it said something new. "You're almost done." The first real slip happened on a Tuesday morning. I was making coffee, watching the dark stream fill the mug, when I caught movement in my peripheral vision. My apartment window, which faces a row of brick buildings, now looked out onto a dim, endless hallway. The walls were tiled in that sickly, institutional green, and somewhere far down, a door closed with a metallic clunk. I blinked, and the street was back, but the coffee had gone cold in my hand, though the pot was still steaming. That was the start. Over the following days, the bleed-throughs grew more frequent. Reflections in mirrors showed corridors instead of my kitchen. Shadows pooled in the corners of my living room in unnatural shapes. Once, when I opened my closet, I found an empty hospital bed inside, its sheets stiff with age, a single leather restraint hanging loose from the side. I closed the door quickly, but the faint scent of antiseptic clung to the air for hours. I told myself they were hallucinations, a mind buckling under stress. But there was one problem with that theory. The tally marks kept increasing. At first, they spread across the walls of my bedroom, then the kitchen, then the bathroom mirror. I'd wake to find a fresh column scratched into the plaster, the pencil strokes rough and uneven. I stopped counting them after the first 1,000. By the time I finally heard them again, I knew resistance was pointless. It began as the same whisper, "Stay," curling like smoke in the back of my mind. But each night it lingered longer, until it began to form sentences. "We've been patient. You're almost there. Count them. Finish it." I didn't ask who he was. That Thursday night, I woke to find my bedroom door open. I never sleep with it open. The hallway beyond was dark, but at the very end, much farther than my apartment's real layout, a pale light glowed. The voice in my head wasn't whispering anymore. It was speaking in a low, steady tone, each word clear. "Come and see." I got out of bed without thinking, as if sleepwalking. My bare feet met cold tile where there should have been carpet. The air grew damp, and the smell of mold thickened until I could taste it. When I reached the light, I saw it was spilling from an open ward. The beds were occupied this time. Figures lay beneath thin blankets, their faces turned toward me. Every single one had my face. The nearest one smiled without opening its eyes. "You're doing so well," it murmured. I stumbled back, but the ward door slammed shut, sealing me in. The tally marks covered every inch of the walls, layered, frantic, almost vibrating in the dim light. The voice in my head spoke again. "You can rest when you're finished." I don't remember what happened next. I woke in my own bed, sweating, the taste of mildew still on my tongue. My hands were black with pencil dust. Days mean nothing now. I'll look at the clock, and hours will have passed without me realizing. The outside world feels thinner, fragile, like a painted backdrop I could tear through if I pressed hard enough. Sometimes I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. They always stop at my door. The knob turns slowly, but never fully opens. Not yet. I've stopped going outside. I'm not sure the city is still there. Instead, I've been counting. I don't remember starting, but I know I can't stop. The marks fill the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. I dream of them, rows and rows, stretching into infinity. Somewhere far ahead, a final mark waits, and with it, an ending. I'm not afraid of finishing anymore. I'm afraid of what happens after. Last night, I woke to find the tally marks glowing faintly in the dark. Not white light, more like the dim green of old hospital lamps. They pulsed in and out, like the slow rhythm of breathing. And then I heard it, not the whisper, not the voice, a sound like hundreds of people, inhaling at once. I realized the marks weren't marks at all. Each one was a doorway, and something on the other side had just leaned close enough to smell me. It's quieter now, almost peaceful. The marks are nearly complete. I think when I make the last one, the doors will open. I don't know if I'll be stepping through into their world, or if they'll be stepping into mine. Either way, it won't matter. The two places are almost the same now. This morning, I poured coffee into a paper cup from Blackwood's cafeteria. I didn't question where it came from. The voice is speaking again. Calm, certain. You've been with us all along. And maybe that's true. Maybe I never left the asylum. Maybe all of this, the apartment, the streets, the sky, was just one more ward in an endless building. And I'm finally reaching the center. When I close my eyes now, I don't see darkness. I see the hallway, long, silent, waiting. I think I'll walk it tonight. And I think when I get to the end, I'll find my bed already made. The hallway is longer tonight. It stretches so far ahead that the light at the end is barely more than a pinprick. I walk toward it anyway. The floor beneath my feet is the black and white tile of Blackwood's main ward. The pattern ripples as I move, bending inwards, funneling me forward. The air is thick, not just damp, but heavy, as though each breath drags something inside my lungs that does not belong to me. The walls shift as I walk. At first, they're bare. Then the tally marks return, crawling up from the floor like frost. My fingers brush them as I pass, and each one feels warm, like touching someone's skin. The voice is no longer in my head. It's in the walls, in the floor, in the rhythm of my steps. Almost there, almost done, almost home. The light grows brighter. When I reach it, I realize it's not a doorway, but an open arch leading into a circular chamber. The ceiling is impossibly high, lost in shadow. The walls are smooth, untouched by marks, except for a single gap on the far side. One last space. A pencil rests on the floor in front of it. I understand without being told. My hand moves before I can think, drawing the final line, the last mark. The moment the pencil lifts from the wall, the room exhales. A sound, like 1,000 doors unlocking at once, shakes the air. The marks around the asylum, in the walls, in my apartment, in my dreams, ignite in green light. And then they open. Figures step through, not quickly, not hungrily, patiently. They move like they have been doing this for a long time. Some wear hospital gowns, others nurses' uniforms. Some are children, some are elderly. Their faces are familiar, too familiar. I see Marlowe among them, Evelyn, the child with my younger face. All of them smiling, the same thin, knowing smile. I realize they are not separate people. They are fragments, reflections. Every mark I made, was a piece of myself, and now they've stepped free. The tallest of them, a shadow with no features, but eyes like wet stone, steps forward. Its voice is the voice I have heard all along. "You've done your part. What happens now?" I ask. My own voice sounds far away. It tilts its head. "Now, you stay." The figures close in, not to harm me, not exactly, but to surround me, to fold me into their circle. The chamber feels smaller, the ceiling lower. The air thickens until movement is impossible. Somewhere beyond the walls, I hear the front doors of Blackwood slam shut, and I understand there was never an escape. Not for me, not for anyone who hears the whisper. The tally marks weren't a count of time or people. They were a measure of how close the building was to pulling me into its heart. Now I am part of it. If anyone finds this, if you hear the scratching in your walls, if you see marks where there should be none, stop counting. Do not pick up the pencil. Do not follow the hallway, because once you make the last mark, the doors will open, and they will be waiting. Thank you for listening to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. If you enjoyed tonight's story and want to hear more journeys into the strange and the haunted, please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And maybe keep your doors closed tonight.